Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Thunderstrike and watched the stars through the main window. His ship was huge, almost 2 kilometers long, and it was the last hope for all of humanity. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of computers and the breathing of his crew. Everyone knew what was coming. The year was 2387 and humanity was about to die. The Galactic Coalition had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. 12 alien species had joined together to wipe out every human in the galaxy. They had already destroyed most of Earth's colonies and killed billions of people. Now they were coming for Earth itself. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks sat at her control station and checked the long-range sensors again. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Captain, the Coalition fleet is 3 hours away. I count over 3,000 ships from all 12 species." Morrison nodded, but did not look away from the stars. He had known this day would come ever since the Coalition declared war on humanity 6 months ago. At first, it had seemed like a trade dispute. Humans wanted to expand to new worlds and trade freely with other species. The Coalition wanted humans to accept limits and follow their rules. When humanity refused, the aliens decided that humans were too aggressive and too dangerous to exist. Commander Ryan Peters walked up to Morrison and handed him a datapad with the latest reports. "Sir, we lost contact with the Luna defense stations 20 minutes ago. The orbital platforms around Earth are gone. We are the only military ship left." Morrison took the pad and read the numbers. The Coalition had been very thorough in their attack. They had hit every human military base, every space station, every colony. The aliens had better technology, better weapons, and far more ships. It should have been an easy victory for them. Thilo. Thunderstrike had 800 crew members, and they were all that stood between the alien fleet and Earth. Morrison knew the math was simple. 1 human ship against 3,000 alien ships meant certain death, but he also knew that humans had never been good at accepting certain death. Chief Engineer Danny Cole called from the engine room over the communication system. "Captain, I have pushed the fusion reactors as high as they can go. We have full power to all systems." Navigation Officer Kate Johnson was busy plotting their course through the star system. "Sir, if we position ourselves between Earth and their main fleet, we can force them to go through us to reach the planet." Communications Specialist Alex Turner was listening to radio signals from Earth. "Captain, the government buildings are being evacuated. They are moving everyone into underground shelters." Morrison walked over to his captain's chair and activated the ship-wide communication system. His voice echoed through every corridor and room on the Thunderstrike. "All hands, this is your captain. You all know why we are here. The Coalition fleet is coming to destroy our homeworld. Earth's children are counting on us to protect them. Today we show the galaxy what humans can do when they fight for their families." The crew had been preparing for this battle for weeks. They had run drills until every person knew exactly what to do. They had modified weapons and repaired every system until the ship was as ready as it could be. But everyone knew that ready might not be enough. Chief Gunner Pete Walsh was checking the main batteries for the 10th time that day. The Thunderstrike had the most powerful weapons that human technology could build. Railguns that could fire, metal slugs at incredible speeds, missile systems that could track and destroy multiple targets, point defense guns that could shoot down incoming attacks. It was an impressive arsenal, but the Coalition had weapons that humans barely understood. Morrison looked at his crew and felt proud of every one of them. They were scared just like he was, but they were not backing down. Lisa Brooks was the best tactical officer in the human fleet. Ryan Peters had served with Morrison for 15 years and never failed him. Danny Cole could make engines run when they should have exploded. Kate Johnson could pilot a ship through an asteroid field with her eyes closed. The Coalition species each had their own advantages. The Zephyrians had energy weapons that could slice through any armor. The Korvaxi used bioships that could repair themselves and shoot acid that would eat through metal. The robotic Nexus had electromagnetic weapons that could shut down all electronics. The other 9 species each brought their own deadly technologies to the fight. Admiral Thexva commanded the Coalition fleet from his Crystal flagship. He had studied human military tactics and found them crude but effective. Humans used kinetic weapons instead of energy beams. They favored direct attacks over subtle strategies. The Admiral expected this battle to be over quickly once his superior technology overwhelmed the primitive human ship. Morrison sat down in his command chair and looked at the tactical display. Red dots representing enemy ships filled the screen like a swarm of angry insects. In the center was one blue dot representing the Thunderstrike. The odds were impossible, but Morrison had lived through impossible odds before. 20 years ago, he had been a young officer on a patrol ship when pirates attacked a human colony. His captain had been killed in the first attack, and Morrison had taken command. With only one ship against 5 pirate vessels, he had used hit-and-run tactics to destroy 3 enemies and drive off the other 2. That battle had taught him that sometimes the impossible just meant you had to be more creative. The bridge crew was working quietly at their stations. Everyone was checking systems, loading weapons, and preparing for the fight of their lives. They were not just fighting for Earth. They were fighting for the idea that humans had a right to exist in the galaxy. Turner spoke up from his communication station. "Captain, we are getting a signal from the Coalition fleet. They want to talk." Morrison straightened up in his chair. "Put it on the main screen." The window showing the stars was replaced by the image of Admiral Thexva. The alien's crystalline face showed no emotion as he spoke. "Human vessel, I am Admiral Thexva of the Galactic Coalition. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be destroyed. Your species has been judged unworthy of continued existence." Morrison stood up and faced the screen. "Admiral, I have a counter-proposal for you. Take your fleet and get out of our star system." The alien seemed surprised by the human's response. "You cannot be serious. You have 1 ship. We have 3,000. Mathematics is not a matter of opinion." Morrison smiled grimly. "Then this should be easy for you, Admiral." He cut the communication link and turned to his crew. "All stations, prepare for battle. Let us show them what 1 human ship can do." The Coalition fleet began to move toward Earth, and the last battle for humanity was about to begin. The Coalition fleet spread across space like a deadly cloud of metal and energy. Admiral Thexva watched from his flagship as his ships moved into perfect attack formation. 3,000 vessels from 12 different species, each one more advanced than the single human ship that dared to stand against them. The Zephyrian crystal ships gleamed like diamonds in the starlight. Their energy weapons could cut through the thickest armor like it was paper. The Korvaxi bioships pulsed with organic life, their acid weapons capable of eating through any material. The robotic Nexus cubes moved in precise geometric patterns, their electromagnetic pulse weapons designed to shut down enemy systems completely. Captain Morrison studied his tactical display as the enemy fleet approached. The screen showed thousands of red dots moving toward the single blue dot that represented the Thunderstrike. "Lisa, give me a breakdown of what we are facing." Lieutenant Commander Brooks worked at her station, analyzing the sensor data. "The Zephyrian ships have the most powerful energy weapons. The Korvaxi vessels use biological attacks that can dissolve our hull. The Nexus robots can shut down our computers and weapons with electromagnetic pulses. The other species each bring their own specialized weapons." Morrison nodded as he absorbed the information. The human ship was powerful, but it was built with Earth technology that was centuries behind what the aliens possessed. Humans had only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years, while some of these species had been exploring space for thousands of years. Commander Peters checked the ship's defensive systems. "All armor plating is secure. Point defense. Weapons are ready. Damage control teams are standing by." The Thunderstrike was humanity's greatest achievement in military engineering. Its armor was made from the strongest materials that human science could create. Its weapons were designed to punch through any defense. Its crew was trained to handle any crisis. But none of that changed the basic math of the situation. Chief Engineer Cole reported from the engine room. "Captain, all reactors are running at maximum power. I can give you emergency power if needed, but it will damage the systems." Morrison appreciated his engineer's honesty. In a few minutes, system damage might be the least of their worries. "Understood, Danny. Give me everything you have when I need it. The first wave of coalition fighters launched from the larger ships. Hundreds of small attack craft swarmed toward the Thunderstrike like angry insects. Each fighter was equipped with weapons that could damage a human ship, and there were too many to count. "Incoming fighters," announced Brooks. "I count over 400 small craft approaching fast." Morrison gripped his command chair as the enemy fighters closed in. "All point defense batteries, open fire. Pete, give them everything we have. Aftinam." Gunner Walsh activated the ship's defensive weapons. Streams of projectiles filled the space around the Thunderstrike as the point defense guns tracked and fired at the approaching fighters. Unlike most alien weapons that used energy beams, human weapons fired solid metal bullets at incredible speeds. The first fighters to reach the Thunderstrike exploded as the kinetic rounds tore through their hulls. The aliens had designed their ships to deflect energy weapons, but solid projectiles were harder to stop. Explosions bloomed around the human ship as fighter after fighter was destroyed, but there were too many of them. Some fighters got through the defensive fire and launched their own attacks. Energy beams and plasma bolts struck the Thunderstrike's armor, causing the ship to shake and throwing crew members around the bridge. "Hull breach on Deck 7, reported Peters. "Damage control teams responding." Morrison watched as his ship took hit after hit from the enemy fighters. The Thunderstrike's armor was holding, but he knew it would not last forever. "Lisa, target the fighter launch bays on their capital ships. If we can stop them from launching more fighters, we might have a chance." The main batteries of the Thunderstrike rotated and aimed at the coalition fleet. Walsh fired the railguns, sending massive metal projectiles across space at 10% of light speed. The aliens had not expected kinetic weapons moving at such incredible velocity. 3 Korvaxi cruisers exploded as the railgun rounds punched through their biohulls. The organic ships had been designed to absorb and deflect energy attacks, but they could not handle the raw kinetic force of the human weapons. Green fluid sprayed into space as the alien vessels died. Admiral Thexva watched in shock as 3 of his ships were destroyed in seconds. "How are they doing this? Our shields should stop any attack." His tactical officer studied the sensor readings. "Admiral, they are using primitive kinetic weapons. Solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. Our energy shields cannot deflect them." The Admiral had studied human military history and found it brutal but primitive. Humans still used bullets and bombs instead of the clean energy weapons that civilized species preferred. But now he was learning that sometimes primitive weapons could be more effective than advanced ones. Morrison ordered his ship to move deeper into the enemy formation. "Kate, take us into the middle of their fleet. If we stay at long range, they can surround us." Navigation Officer Johnson plotted a course directly toward the coalition ships. "Sir, that will put us in range of all their weapons." Morrison nodded. "It will also put them in range of ours, and more importantly, they will not be able to fire at full power without hitting their own ships." The Thunderstrike accelerated toward the enemy fleet, its engines glowing brightly in the darkness of space. The human ship was outnumbered 3,000 to 1, but it was not acting like a ship that expected to lose. Instead, it was behaving like a predator that had found a herd of prey. Brooks coordinated the ship's weapons as they closed with the enemy. "The Nexus ships are trying to jam our targeting systems, but their electromagnetic pulses are also interfering with Zephyrian communication networks." Morrison smiled grimly. "Use that against them. If they cannot coordinate their attacks, we might be able to pick them off one by one." The battle became more intense as the Thunderstrike reached the coalition formation. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled space around the human ship, but Morrison's gamble was working. The alien ships could not use their most powerful weapons without risking damage to their own fleet. Turner intercepted alien communications from his station. "Captain, the different species are having trouble coordinating their attacks. The Zephyrians are giving orders that the Korvaxi do not understand." This was exactly what Morrison had hoped for. The coalition's strength came from their numbers and their advanced technology, but their weakness was that 12 different species had 12 different ways of fighting. Humans, by contrast, had learned to work together through thousands of years of warfare against each other. Walsh had figured out that the Korvaxi bioships were vulnerable to specific frequencies of vibration. "Captain, if I adjust the railgun rounds to resonate at the right frequency, I can shake their hulls apart." Morrison nodded. "Do it." The modified ammunition tore through 3 more enemy vessels, their organic structures unable to cope with the harmonic destruction. The Coalition fleet was learning that humans were not just primitive warriors. They were adaptive fighters who could learn and improvise in the middle of a battle. Medical Officer Nancy Scott worked frantically in the ship's medical bay as wounded crew members were brought in. "I need more medical supplies down here," she called over the communication system. Security Chief Ben Clark organized damage control parties throughout the ship. "All teams patch what you can and move on. We do not have time for perfect repairs." The Thunderstrike continued to fight, taking damage but giving back more than it received. Hours passed, and the Coalition fleet began to realize that this would not be the easy victory they had expected. The space around Earth became a battlefield of fire and destruction. The Thunderstrike moved through the Coalition formations like a shark among fish, its weapons carving paths of devastation through the enemy fleet. What had started as an execution had become a real war. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge as explosions lit up the darkness around his ship. The Coalition had expected to destroy the human dreadnought within minutes. Instead, they had been fighting for 3 hours and losing, ships with every exchange of fire. "Danny, I need more power to the forward guns," Morrison called to his chief engineer over the communication system. Cole's voice came back from the engine room, strained but determined. "Captain, I am pushing these reactors beyond their safety limits. If we keep this up, we might have a core breach." Morrison understood the risk, but he also understood that they were already fighting a battle they could not win by normal standards. "Keep pushing, Danny. We are not normal right now." The Thunderstrike had become the center of attention for the entire Coalition fleet. Hundreds of ships were firing at the human vessel, their weapons creating a continuous storm of energy and projectiles. But the human ship refused to die, and worse for the aliens, it kept fighting back effectively. Lieutenant Commander Brooks had evolved from a tactical officer into something approaching a tactical genius. The constant pressure of impossible odds had pushed her mind into a state of perfect clarity, where she could see patterns in the chaos of battle. "Captain, the Nexus ships are using electromagnetic pulses to jam our targeting systems, but those same pulses are disrupting Zephyrian shield harmonics. If we time our attacks right after each pulse, we can punch through their defenses." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Do it." The timing had to be perfect. Each time the robotic Nexus ships fired their jamming pulses, Brooks would fire the Thunderstrikes, railguns at nearby Zephyrian vessels. The crystalline ships found their normally impenetrable shields failing, just as massive kinetic rounds struck their hulls. Chief Gunner Walsh had become an artist of destruction. He had learned the weaknesses of each alien ship type and was exploiting them with ruthless efficiency. The Korvaxi bioships could be destroyed by hitting them with rounds that vibrated at specific frequencies. The robotic Nexus cubes were vulnerable to explosive rounds that could crack their geometric perfection. "Loading armor-piercing rounds for the Zephyrian cruiser at bearing 27 Mark IV, Walsh announced as he targeted another enemy ship. The railgun round struck the crystalline vessel and shattered it like glass. Fragments of the alien ship scattered in all directions, some of them hitting other Coalition vessels and causing secondary damage. Admiral Thexva watched from his flagship as his fleet continued to take losses. What should have been a simple execution had become a nightmare. The single human ship was not just surviving against impossible odds, it was winning individual battles within the larger war. "How many ships have we lost?" the Admiral asked his tactical officer. The reply made his crystalline blood run cold. "Over 200 vessels destroyed, Admiral. At this rate, we will lose our numerical advantage within 10 hours. Thexva could not understand what was happening. His ships had better technology, better weapons, and better defenses. But somehow the primitive human vessel was outfighting his entire fleet. The Admiral was learning that there were things more important than technology and warfare. The crew of the Thunderstrike was operating on pure adrenaline and determination. They had been fighting for hours without rest, but none of them showed any sign of slowing down. If anything, they seemed to be getting better as the battle continued. Navigation Officer Johnson had begun plotting courses that seemed impossible even to her own trained mind. She was threading the massive dreadnought between enemy ships with clearances measured in meters, using the Coalition's numerical superiority against them. "Taking us through the middle of their formation," Johnson announced as she piloted the ship between two enemy battle groups. "They cannot fire at us without hitting each other." Communications Specialist Turner was intercepting alien communications and feeding intelligence to Brooks faster than the enemy could adapt their tactics. "Captain, the Korvaxi are complaining that the Zephyrians are not providing adequate support. The Nexus units are questioning the battle plan." This intelligence was more valuable than any weapon. The Coalition's greatest strength was supposed to be their unity and coordination, but under pressure, the 12 different species were beginning to show cracks in their alliance. Morrison recognized the opportunity and exploited it ruthlessly. "Lisa, target their command ships. If we can disrupt their leadership, their coordination will collapse completely." Brooks identified the command vessels in each alien formation and began targeting them with precision strikes. The Coalition had made the mistake of putting their most important ships in positions where they could coordinate their forces. That also made them perfect targets for the human railguns. The Thunderstrike's medical bay was full of wounded crew members, but Medical Officer Scott noticed something interesting. Despite the chaos and destruction around them, morale was actually improving as the battle continued. "Captain," she reported over the communication system, "we have 43 wounded but 0 fatalities. The crew is exhausted, but their spirits are high. They know they are making history." This was something the Coalition could not understand. Their species fought wars for logical reasons like resources or territory. Humans were fighting for something much more powerful. They were fighting for their right to exist, for their families, for their future among the stars. Security Chief Clark organized repair teams that moved through the ship, fixing damage almost as fast as it was inflicted. Human engineers had designed the Thunderstrike to be repaired quickly in battle, and that design was proving its worth. "Hull breach on Deck 12 is sealed," Clark reported. "Forward armor is down to 60%, but all weapons are still operational." The battle had reached a critical point. The Coalition fleet was beginning to show signs of confusion and poor coordination. Some ships were retreating to safe distances while others continued to press the attack. The unified front that had seemed so overwhelming at the start of the battle was breaking apart under pressure. Commander Peters coordinated the ship's defensive systems as enemy fire continued to pound their armor. "Captain, we are taking heavy damage, but our systems are holding. How long can we keep this up?" Morrison looked at the tactical display that showed hundreds of enemy ships still surrounding his vessel. The math had not changed. They were still outnumbered thousands to 1. But something else had changed. The enemy was no longer acting like they were guaranteed to win. "As long as it takes, Ryan," Morrison replied. "They started this fight thinking they could execute us easily. Now they know they are in a real war. Let us see how committed they really are to wiping out humanity." The Thunderstrike continued its deadly dance through the enemy formations, dealing destruction wherever it went. The single human ship had become a symbol of everything that made humanity dangerous. They refused to accept defeat. They learned and adapted constantly, and they would never stop fighting for what they believed in. The battle for Earth was entering its most critical phase, and the outcome would determine whether humanity had a future among the stars. The Coalition fleet was beginning to fracture under the relentless assault of the single human dreadnought. What had started as a coordinated attack by 12 species was becoming a confused mess of individual battles. Admiral Thexva watched, in growing horror as his perfectly planned execution turned into a disaster. Captain Morrison recognized the signs of enemy confusion and pressed his advantage harder. The Thunderstrike accelerated toward a group of Korvaxi bioships that had become separated from the main fleet. "Pete, give me everything you have on those organic vessels." Chief Gunner Walsh targeted the isolated bioships with resonance rounds designed to shake their living hulls apart. The Korvaxi vessels tried to retreat, but they were not fast enough to escape the human weapons. 3 more enemy ships died in explosions of green biological fluid. The destruction of the isolated ships had an unexpected effect on the rest of the Coalition fleet. The robotic Nexus units, calculating odds with mechanical precision, determined that the human ship represented an unacceptable threat to their survival. They began withdrawing to safer distances. "The Nexus ships are pulling back," reported Lieutenant Commander Brooks from her tactical station. "They are opening gaps in the enemy formation." Morrison saw the opportunity immediately. "Kate, take us through those gaps. Let us see if we can split their fleet in half." Navigation Officer Johnson plotted a course through the opening left by the retreating robots. The Thunderstrike surged forward, its damaged engines straining to build speed. The massive human ship carved a path directly through the middle of the Coalition formation. The Korvaxi bioships, operating on survival instincts, bred into their organic nature, scattered as the human dreadnought approached. Their living ships recognized a predator when they saw one, and every instinct told them to flee rather than fight. Admiral Thexva tried desperately to restore order to his fleet. "All ships, maintain formation, do not break ranks." But it was too late. The careful coordination that had made the Coalition fleet so powerful was breaking down under pressure. Each species was reverting to their own tactical instincts instead of following the unified battle plan. The Zephyrian crystal ships tried to reform their battle line, but they found themselves isolated as their allies retreated or scattered. The crystalline vessels were powerful when supported by other ship types, but they were vulnerable when fighting alone. Morrison recognized the tactical situation and exploited it ruthlessly. "Lisa, concentrate all fire on the isolated Zephyrian ships. Without support from the other species, they are sitting targets." Brooks coordinated a devastating barrage of railgun fire at the separated crystal ships. The kinetic rounds shattered the alien vessels one by one, their beautiful crystalline hulls unable to withstand the brutal force of human weapons. Communications. Specialist Turner was monitoring enemy transmissions and providing real-time intelligence about Coalition confusion. "Captain, they are arguing with each other on open channels. The Nexus units are demanding immediate withdrawal. The Korvaxi are accusing the Zephyrians of incompetent leadership." This intelligence confirmed what Morrison could see on his tactical display. The Coalition was no longer a unified force. It had become a collection of individual species, each fighting according to their own priorities and fears. Commander Peters coordinated damage control as the ship continued to take enemy fire. "Sir, we have lost main armor on the port side. Hull integrity is down to 40%, but all weapon systems are still operational." The Thunderstrike was battered and bleeding, but it was still fighting. More importantly, it was still winning individual battles against ships that should have been superior in every way. Chief Engineer Cole had performed miracles keeping the ship's systems running under combat conditions. "Captain, I have rerouted power from non-essential systems to keep the weapons firing. We can maintain current power levels for maybe 2 more hours." Morrison nodded grimly. 2 hours might be enough if the enemy continued to lose cohesion at the current rate. But he knew that desperate enemies could be the most dangerous. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, and both sides were showing signs of exhaustion. But there was a crucial difference. The human crew was getting more determined as the fight continued, while the Coalition forces were losing their will to fight. Medical Officer Nancy Scott had treated dozens of wounded crew members, but she noticed something remarkable. Despite the injuries and exhaustion, morale among the crew remained high. "Captain, the wounded are asking to return to duty as soon as possible. They do not want to miss the end of this battle." This kind of dedication was something the Coalition species could not understand. Their civilized societies had evolved beyond the need for desperate struggles. They fought wars with professional soldiers who followed orders and calculated acceptable losses. Humans were fighting with the fury of people defending their homes and families. Security Chief Ben Clark organized repair teams that moved through the ship like highly trained emergency crews. "Forward armor is being patched with emergency plating. We are not pretty, but we are still functional." The Thunderstrike had become a symbol of human determination made manifest in steel and fire. Every system that failed was quickly repaired or bypassed. Every weapon that was damaged was either fixed or replaced. The ship refused to die because its crew refused to give up. Admiral HFY made a desperate decision. He ordered his remaining ships to concentrate all their firepower on the human dreadnought, regardless of formation or tactical coordination. All vessels, focus everything on that ship. Destroy it at any cost. The coalition ships that were still capable of fighting turned their weapons on the Thunderstrike. Energy beams, plasma bolts, acid clouds, and electromagnetic pulses all converged on the human vessel. The space around the ship became a storm of destruction unlike anything seen in galactic history. For a moment, the Thunderstrike disappeared completely behind a wall of enemy fire. The coalition crews held their breath, certain that nothing could survive such concentrated destruction. Sensors could not penetrate the chaos of overlapping weapons effects. Then the firestorm cleared, and the human ship emerged from the inferno. It was scarred and blackened. Its armor was gone in many places, and fires burned along its hull. But its weapons were still firing, and it was still moving toward the enemy. "Impossible," whispered Admiral HFY. "No ship could survive that attack." What the Admiral did not understand was that the Thunderstrike was more than just a ship. It was an expression of human will made real in metal and energy. Every rivet had been placed by hands that remembered the destruction of human colonies. Every system had been built by minds that refused to accept defeat. Morrison's uniform was torn and bloody, but his voice remained steady as he gave orders. "All remaining weapons target their flagship. If we are going down, we are taking their leader with us." The final exchange was brutal and swift. The Thunderstrike's last functional railgun fired one more time, sending a projectile directly at Admiral HFY's crystal flagship. The coalition commander had just enough time to realize that he had completely misunderstood his enemy before the kinetic round tore his ship apart. With their admiral dead and their fleet in chaos, the coalition began a general retreat. The surviving ships scattered in all directions, carrying with them a new understanding of what it meant to fight against humanity. The impossible had happened. One human ship had broken the will of an entire galactic fleet through sheer determination and refusal to surrender. The silence after battle was almost deafening. Captain Morrison stood on his damaged bridge and watched as the last coalition ships fled into hyperspace, their running lights disappearing into the darkness between stars. The space around Earth was littered with the wreckage of alien vessels, a graveyard that stretched for millions of kilometers in every direction. Commander Peters worked at his station, assessing the damage to their ship. "Captain, we have lost main engines, life support is failing on 6 decks, and we have hull breaches in 12 sections. Weapons are down to 15% capacity." Morrison nodded as he absorbed the damage report. The Thunderstrike looked like it had been through a metal shredder, but it was still in one piece. More importantly, it was still protecting Earth. "Signal Earth Command, Ryan. Tell them the invasion has been stopped." Communications specialist Alex Turner's hands shook as he transmitted the message that would save billions of lives. "Earth Command, this is the Thunderstrike. The coalition fleet has been defeated. Repeat, the invasion has been repelled. Earth is safe." The response from Earth Command came immediately, filled with emotion and disbelief. "Thunderstrike, confirm your last message. Are you saying that one ship defeated the entire coalition armada?" Turner looked at Morrison, who nodded for him to respond. "Confirmed, Earth Command. The enemy fleet has withdrawn. We estimate over 1,500 coalition vessels were destroyed or disabled. The remaining ships have fled the system." Morrison could hear the celebration beginning on Earth, through the radio channels. Billions of people who had prepared for extinction were instead celebrating their impossible salvation. Cities that had been evacuated were already planning victory parades. Children who had hidden in underground bunkers were asking when they could see the stars again. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Brooks was studying the sensor readings from the battle. "Captain, I am analyzing the enemy retreat pattern. They are not regrouping. They are genuinely fleeing in panic. I do not think they will be back." This was the most important intelligence of all. The coalition had not retreated to plan a new attack. They had broken completely, their will to fight destroyed by the realization that they could not defeat humanity through superior numbers and technology alone. Chief Engineer Danny Cole reported from the engine room, his voice exhausted but proud. "Captain, I have managed to restore minimal power to the engines. We can move but not very fast. It will take months to repair all the damage." Medical Officer Nancy Scott called from the medical bay with a report that seemed impossible, given the intensity of the battle. "Captain, final casualty count is 47 injured and 3 dead. Considering what we just went through, that is miraculous." Morrison felt a moment of sadness for the 3 crew members who had died protecting Earth. They would be remembered as heroes who gave their lives to save humanity. But he also felt incredible pride that so many had survived a battle that should have killed them all. The Thunderstrike began limping toward Earth, its damaged engines struggling to move the massive ship. Behind them, rescue vessels from Earth were already launching to provide assistance. The planet that had nearly been destroyed was now sending help to its saviors. Chief Gunner Pete Walsh was securing his weapon systems when he made an observation that captured the meaning of their victory. "Captain, we fired over 8,000 rounds during the battle. Every single shot was aimed at an enemy ship. We did not waste a single bullet." This efficiency under pressure was part of what had made their victory possible. Humans had learned warfare through thousands of years of fighting each other. Every trick, every desperate tactic, every impossible strategy had been tested in the crucible of human conflict. Navigation Officer Kate Johnson was plotting their course back to Earth when she noticed something on her sensors. "Captain, we have incoming ships, multiple contacts approaching fast." For a moment, the bridge crew tensed, thinking the coalition had returned for another attack, but Turner quickly identified the new contacts. "Sir, those are human ships. The entire home fleet is coming to escort us back to Earth." Morrison smiled as he watched dozens of human vessels approaching their position. The ships had been held in reserve to defend Earth during ground invasion, but now they were coming to honor the crew that had made ground invasion unnecessary. The lead ship was the UES Constitution, commanded by Admiral Sarah Martinez. Her voice came over the communication channel with obvious emotion. "Captain Morrison, this is Admiral Martinez. On behalf of all humanity, thank you. What you and your crew accomplished today will be remembered forever." Morrison activated his communication system to respond to the Admiral. "Thank you, Admiral. We were just doing our job. Earth is worth fighting for." But even as he spoke those modest words, Morrison knew that what they had accomplished was far more than just doing their job. They had changed the course of galactic history in a single battle. As the rescue ships reached the Thunderstrike, their crews could see the extensive damage to the human dreadnought. The ship's armor was completely gone in many places, revealing the internal structure beneath. Scorch marks and impact craters covered every surface. It was amazing that the ship was still holding together. Security Chief Ben Clark was organizing the crew for evacuation to the rescue ships when he made a comment that would become part of military legend. "Captain, I think we proved something important today. When humans are cornered and fighting for their families, we are the most dangerous species in the galaxy." Morrison nodded as he looked out at the debris field that had once been a coalition armada. 3,000 alien ships had come to destroy humanity. Less than half had survived to retreat, and those survivors would carry the memory of this battle back to their home worlds. The rescue ships began taking aboard the wounded crew members from the Thunderstrike. Medical teams from Earth were amazed at how well the ship's crew had performed under impossible conditions. They had fought for 8 hours against overwhelming odds, and never showed any sign of breaking. As the Thunderstrike approached Earth, communication channels filled with messages from around the planet. Every government leader, every military commander, every citizen who could access a radio wanted to thank the crew that had saved their world. Morrison realized that this battle would change everything. The coalition species would never again dismiss humanity as primitive. Other civilizations that had remained neutral would now view humans with a mixture of respect and fear. The galaxy had learned that humans were not a species to be underestimated. The Thunderstrike entered Earth orbit to a reception unlike anything in human history. Every ship in the system fired ceremonial salutes, Space stations and orbital platforms activated their lights in tribute. Even on the planet's surface, cities illuminated themselves in patterns that could be seen from space. Morrison stood on his bridge one final time before transferring to a rescue ship. The Thunderstrike had been his home for 5 years, and it had just become the most famous warship in human history. The ship would be repaired and returned to service, but it would never again be just a warship. It had become a symbol of human determination. As he prepared to leave his ship, Morrison made one final log entry. Captain's log, final entry. Today we learned that superior technology and overwhelming numbers do not guarantee victory. We learned that when humans fight for their families and their future, they cannot be defeated. We learned that one ship, crewed by people who refuse to surrender, can change the fate of an entire species. The battle was over, but its effects would echo through the galaxy for generations. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through diplomacy or submission, but through courage and the willingness to fight impossible odds. The galaxy would remember the day when one human dreadnought stood against 3,000 alien ships and won.